Have you ever wondered why people only seem to notice your worth the moment you step away? It's almost as if your silence echoes louder than your presence ever did. There's a strange alchemy in that moment. When you stop explaining, stop pleasing, stop making yourself endlessly available, the world begins to shift, faces turn, energy trembles, and suddenly those who once overlooked you start to feel your absence like a haunting. You've been taught to believe that love means always being there, that goodness is measured by how much of yourself you can give before collapsing. But what if this constant availability isn't a sign of love, but of self-abandonment? What if every yes you said out of fear, every instant reply, every forced smile was slowly draining your soul, piece by piece, until you became invisible, even to yourself? Carl Jung once said that what you resist persists. Maybe that's why the more you try to hold on to people, to peace, to approval, the more everything seems to slip through your fingers. You're not weak, you're exhausted. Exhausted from carrying everyone else's chaos, from mistaking exhaustion for kindness, from confusing presence with love. But something inside you has started to awaken. A quiet voice that whispers, "Enough." You can feel it, can't you? That subtle shift, like the tide changing beneath your feet, the sense that something deep within you is preparing to withdraw, not out of anger but out of power. Because when you stop being always available, you stop being predictable. And when you stop being predictable, you become untouchable. The truth is, silence isn't emptiness. It's energy returning home. It's your soul remembering that you were never meant to be a puppet for other people's emotions. You were meant to be a mirror, calm, deep, and sovereign. But what really happens when you finally stop giving your energy away? When you become still and the world begins to panic, that's where everything begins to change. Have you ever felt a sudden heaviness in your chest when someone walks into the room, even before they speak? Or maybe you've dreamt of something so vivid that when you woke up, it clung to you like fog, echoing through your day as if the universe had whispered a warning you couldn't quite translate. You tell yourself it's nothing, a coincidence, fatigue, a random thought. But somewhere deep inside, you know it isn't. There are moments when life seems to hum beneath the surface, when ordinary events carry a strange vibration. You sense when someone's lying, even if their words are perfect. You feel drained after certain conversations, though nothing wrong was said. You notice lights flicker, your phone glitch, or your body tense for no apparent reason, as if your spirit recognizes a hidden truth that your mind refuses to see. This is the silent dialogue of energy, a sacred language most people have forgotten how to read. It's the way the world speaks to you when words fail, the tension before a storm, the chill in the air before bad news, the restlessness that keeps you awake at 3 a.m. for no reason at all. These are not coincidences. They are subtle signals from the invisible realm, reminders that your soul is listening even when you are not. But we were not taught to listen. We were taught to rationalize, to explain away, to bury what we feel beneath layers of logic and noise. Society praises availability to work, to people, to constant stimulation. You scroll, you answer, you react until there's no room left for silence. And yet, silence is exactly where the messages live. You've probably felt it, that strange fatigue after trying to hold everyone together. You tell yourself you're fine, but your body keeps whispering otherwise. The tension in your shoulders, the shallow breath, the headaches that come and go, energy trying to tell you you're giving too much, you're leaking your power. And in that emptiness, something begins to shift. You start noticing patterns, the same kinds of people appearing in your life, the same lessons repeating, the same emotional wounds being touched again and again. You think, why does this keep happening to me? But it's not punishment, it's reflection. Life mirrors what you refuse to acknowledge. Carl Jung said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So what if your exhaustion isn't physical, but spiritual? What if every strange sensation, the anxiety, the déjà vu, the sudden mood shifts, are not random, but signals of imbalance? Your soul trying to call you back home? People who drain you are not always evil. They're simply tuned to take what you keep offering. And the more available you are, the easier it becomes for others to feed on your emotional field. It's not a supernatural idea. It's energy. Every word, every thought, every yes that should have been a no costs something. Have you ever walked away from someone and felt lighter, like you could breathe again? That's not coincidence. That's energy realigning itself. And the opposite is true too. When you leave certain conversations feeling empty, confused, or heavy, it's because something in that exchange pulled more from you than it gave. The mystery is that your soul always knows. It sends you hints, signs, sensations. But the modern mind, so busy, so connected, so overstimulated, doesn't know how to interpret them anymore. We mistake intuition for anxiety, solitude for sadness, silence for weakness. But beneath all that noise, the truth waits patiently. It's not about ghosts or magic, it's about awareness. Your spirit is constantly communicating, trying to protect you, to guide you toward balance. And the first sign of awakening isn't seeing visions or hearing voices. It's recognizing the patterns you once ignored. Maybe that's why you're here, listening now. Because part of you already feels the pull, that invisible thread tugging you toward understanding something deeper about your own energy. But here's the question that changes everything. If your soul has been speaking to you all this time through signs, dreams, and sensations, what happens when you finally stop being available to the noise and start listening to that voice instead? There is a moment, quiet, almost imperceptible, when the universe stops whispering and starts echoing. It's that instant when life repeats the same lesson through different faces, different stories, different disguises, until you finally understand. That repetition is the first great spiritual sign. Most people mistake it for coincidence or bad luck. They say, "Why does this always happen to me?" But the truth, the one most never dare to see, is that the universe speaks through patterns. And these patterns are not random. They are reflections of your inner state projected onto the outer world. Carl Jung called it synchronicity, the mysterious alignment of inner experience and external events that reveal a deeper order of reality. Every time you attract the same type of person, face the same emotional wound, or feel trapped in the same cycle, it is not life punishing you. It is life mirroring you. It's trying to show you what you have not yet healed, what you still allow, what you keep giving your energy to without realizing it. Let's say you always end up feeling used or unappreciated. You meet different people, but the story feels painfully familiar. The faces change, the setting changes, yet the emptiness remains. That's not bad luck. That's the law of energetic reflection in motion. What you tolerate becomes what you attract. What you allow in your inner world becomes visible in your outer one. Jung understood that the psyche is not confined within the body. It extends outward, shaping reality itself. When you are available to everyone, emotionally, mentally, energetically, your field becomes porous, open, and unguarded. And just like a magnet attracts metal, you begin to attract experiences that resonate with that same frequency. People who take, situations that drain, chaos that echoes your own inner disconnection. But here's the secret no one teaches you. Energy is never neutral. You are constantly creating, consciously or unconsciously. Your emotions are prayers. Your silence is a declaration. Your availability is an invitation. The first great revelation of the spiritual path is understanding that nothing external happens without internal permission. The moment you recognize that, everything changes. Because now you realize you have been participating in your own suffering, not consciously, but energetically. And if you are powerful enough to create your pain, you are powerful enough to create your peace. The ancient mystics knew this. They believed the world is not happening to us. It's happening through us. The Egyptians called it Heka, the power of the spoken word to shape reality. The early Christian mystics spoke of Logos, the divine word that manifests the invisible into form. And Jung translated this sacred truth into psychological language. Your outer life is a mirror of your inner landscape. When you ignore your intuition, the mirror cracks. When you say yes out of fear, your energy fragments. And when you are always available, you give the world permission to take from you endlessly, until nothing remains but exhaustion. The first secret then is this: life will keep repeating the same lesson until you protect your energy. You will see the same faces with different names, live the same betrayals in new forms, and replay the same emotional stories until your silence replaces reaction, until your boundaries become sacred, until your availability is no longer free. It is not cruelty, it is divine mercy disguised as pain, because if the lesson didn't hurt, you would never wake up. The discomfort is not punishment, it's initiation. The world pushes you to withdraw because only in withdrawal can you hear your own truth again. And once you begin to withdraw consciously, you will feel something miraculous. The world starts to rearrange itself around your peace. People who once drained you will fall away. Situations that once consumed you will lose their hold. Opportunities that align with your soul will appear effortlessly, because energy that was once scattered returns to you. You stop chasing, and things begin to come to you. You stop begging, and respect finds you. You stop explaining, and suddenly your silence becomes magnetic. That is not mysticism, it's energetic law. When you stop leaking energy, you start radiating presence, and presence has power. The same way light doesn't fight darkness, it simply shines. Your centeredness doesn't fight chaos, it dissolves it. Most people will never reach this point because it requires the hardest thing of all, detachment from what once defined you. To stop being always available, you must first stop identifying with the role of the helper, the savior, the peacemaker. You must learn to love without rescuing, to care without losing yourself, to give without disappearing. This is the first sacred teaching Jung hinted at through individuation. To become whole, you must reclaim what you've given away, your attention, your reactions, your emotional availability, because what you constantly give to others, validation, listening, forgiveness, are exactly the things your own soul is starving for. And once you begin to give that back to yourself, something extraordinary happens. The universe starts speaking differently. No longer through pain or repetition, but through alignment. You begin to meet people who don't drain you, but expand you. You find peace in silence. You feel at home in solitude. And every time you say no from a place of self-respect, life rewards you with something real, something that finally stays. This is not arrogance, it's spiritual maturity. The world does not need your constant presence. It needs your authentic essence. And that essence only awakens when you stop scattering your soul into 1,000 directions. So take a breath. Feel your energy returning to you. Every heartbeat, every inhale is a reminder. Your life changes the moment you stop being everywhere and finally decide to be here. If this truth resonates with you, if you can feel that subtle awakening stirring inside, give this video a like and subscribe to our community. Not as an audience, but as a circle of awakening souls walking the same path. Because this is just the beginning. You've seen the first reflection, but what happens when you look even deeper into the mirror and discover the shadow that's been watching you all along? There was a time in my life when I thought kindness was my greatest virtue. I answered every message, helped every friend, carried every problem that was handed to me, even when I could barely carry my own. People called me reliable, understanding, strong, but deep down, I wasn't strong. I was tired. There's a difference between being good and being available, but I didn't know that yet. I remember one night vividly. It was winter, cold enough that even the air felt fragile. I was sitting alone in my apartment, phone buzzing non-stop, messages from people needing advice, attention, help. I had said yes to so many things that day that I had no energy left to say yes to myself. The room was silent, but inside my mind there was chaos. I felt invisible, surrounded by people, yet unseen. That was the night something inside me broke. Or maybe it finally woke up. I turned off my phone for the first time in years, not because I was angry, but because I couldn't breathe. The silence that followed was terrifying. It felt like stepping into a void. For the first time, no one needed me. No one was asking, calling, demanding. And in that emptiness, I realized something devastating. I didn't know who I was outside of other people's needs. It was that night that I had my first true spiritual awakening. Not one filled with light or angels, but one drenched in stillness and truth. I sat there in the dark, and memories started to rise. Faces, voices, moments where I'd said yes just to keep the peace, to be liked, to be needed. And with each one, I felt a piece of myself I had abandoned long ago. The air grew heavy, as if the walls themselves were pressing against me. My heart raced. Tears came, not out of sadness, but out of recognition. I realized I had been living for applause that never came, validation that never satisfied. I had been addicted to being available because being needed made me feel worthy. Carl Jung once said that we don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That night, I faced my own darkness. And in that darkness, I found a strange kind of light, not shining from above, but glowing quietly from within. It was the moment I understood that the reason I was exhausted wasn't because life was unfair, but because I had built my identity around being accessible. My worth was tied to how much I could give, how quickly I could respond, how small I could make myself so others could shine. Days passed, and I didn't turn my phone back on right away. The silence that once terrified me began to feel sacred. I started walking without music, eating without distraction, breathing without rushing. I noticed small things I hadn't seen in years. The rhythm of rain against glass, the whisper of wind through trees, the soft hum of life that exists beneath the noise. And then something miraculous happened. The people who truly loved me stayed. They didn't panic or demand explanations, they simply understood. But those who depended on my constant availability, they disappeared. Some with anger, others with silence of their own. At first it hurt. I felt guilty, as if I had done something wrong. But slowly I began to understand. They weren't leaving me. They were leaving the version of me that existed only to serve them. In that space, new people appeared. Not those who wanted my energy, but those who mirrored it. Conversations became deeper, relationships became lighter, and I began to experience a kind of peace I didn't know existed. The peace that comes when you no longer explain your silence, when you no longer feel guilty for protecting your energy. There's one image from that period I'll never forget. One morning, I woke up before dawn. The world was still dark, but a faint silver light was beginning to bleed into the sky. The streets were empty, and for the first time I felt the weight of solitude. But it wasn't heavy. It was pure. I made a cup of coffee and stood by the window. The city was asleep, and so was my old self. It was as if life had hit reset, as if I was being rewritten from within. That morning I understood something I had always heard but never lived. Solitude is not the absence of love, it's the presence of self. It's the moment you stop chasing others and start meeting yourself again. And once you taste that, there's no going back. because now silence feels like home. If you've ever felt this, that invisible fatigue, that longing to be understood while losing yourself in the process, then you already know this story isn't just mine. It's yours too. Maybe you've had that same restless night, that same tearful awakening, that same quiet decision to step back from the noise. So I want to know, when was your moment of awakening? Have you ever received a sign, a dream, or a strange feeling that told you it was time to change, even if you didn't understand why? Share it in the comments below. Tell me what opened your eyes. What moment shook your soul? I read every story, and in our next videos I'll share some of your experiences. Because this isn't just a channel, it's a community. A circle of souls learning to protect their light in a world that feeds on availability. And as for me, I thought my story ended with silence. But silence, as I soon learned, was only the beginning of something much deeper. Something that would change the way I saw energy, people, and myself forever. The second great secret isn't about what happens around you. It's about what happens inside you when the world pushes your boundaries. You can recognize it the moment your peace is disturbed by something small. A message left unanswered, a comment that lingers, a silence that feels too heavy. It's the instant you feel the urge to react, to explain, defend, or prove yourself. That urge is not random, it's the signal. Carl Jung called this moment the activation of the shadow. It's when the unconscious self, the part of you you've been hiding or denying, rises to the surface. When someone's words irritate you, or when rejection feels unbearable, what you're really facing is not the person, but the mirror of your own unhealed wound. This is the second sign of spiritual awakening, the mirror of triggers. Most people waste years trying to escape this reflection. They blame, they withdraw, they fight. But the awakened ones, those who begin to see beyond appearances, know that every emotional trigger is a sacred messenger. It's not there to punish you. It's there to reveal you. The universe doesn't shout, it whispers through discomfort. That tightening in your chest, that feeling of anger when someone disrespects you, that sadness when you feel unseen. It's not weakness. It's a coded message, written in the language of emotion. And if you learn to read it, it becomes your greatest teacher. Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves." That's not poetry. It's a psychological truth. Your reactions are not proof of who others are. They're reflections of where your power still leaks. Every time you react impulsively, you hand your energy to someone else. But every time you breathe, observe, and stay still, you reclaim it. So here's the technique. Simple, ancient, and yet forgotten in the noise of modern life. The sacred pause. The next time something triggers you, a message, a look, a situation, don't respond immediately. Feel your reaction rise like a wave, but don't surf it. Close your eyes, take one deep breath, and silently ask yourself, whose emotion is this? Mine or theirs? You'll be surprised by how often the answer is theirs. You've simply absorbed someone else's projection. And when you recognize that, the emotion begins to dissolve, because you can't be manipulated by what you clearly see. This small act, that sacred pause, is how you begin to guard your energy. It's how you step out of emotional reflex and into conscious power. It's how you transform reaction into awareness, noise into silence, weakness into wisdom. Here's the secret few talk about. Your reaction is the price others pay to control you. The moment you stop reacting, the transaction ends. You take your energy back, and suddenly, those who used to drain you no longer know how to reach you. They sense the shift, and some will call you distant, cold, selfish. But that's because your peace no longer feeds their chaos. You begin to walk through the world differently, lighter, quieter, but stronger. Your silence becomes unsettling to those who once thrived on your need to explain yourself. But this silence, this restraint, is not suppression, it's sovereignty. Try this for just one day. When someone pushes your buttons, do nothing. When life challenges your patience, breathe instead of reacting. When fear rises, watch it like you'd watch a storm from behind a window. Do not fight it, do not flee, just watch. At first, it feels unnatural, even uncomfortable, like holding back a flood. But soon, something miraculous happens. The energy that used to rush outward in defense begins to stay within you. You feel calmer, more present, more powerful. You begin to notice that the world no longer dictates your emotions. You do. And that's when the magic begins to unfold. You'll see how situations that once consumed you start to dissolve without effort. People who used to provoke you will lose their power. Opportunities that once seemed unreachable will come to you naturally because your energy is finally aligned, not scattered. This is not just a psychological shift, it's an energetic one. When you stop giving your emotional reactions away, you conserve what Jung called psychic energy. And psychic energy is the fuel of creation. You can use it to heal, to attract, to manifest, because what you once spent on reaction, you now invest in creation. So, from this moment on, remember this: when your peace is disturbed, it's not the world testing you, it's your soul reminding you of its strength. Each trigger is an invitation to rise above reflex and meet yourself again. The sacred pause is your doorway to power. It's how you stop being a puppet of emotion and start becoming the architect of your energy. Try it today, even once, and you'll feel the difference. And if this message resonates with you, if something inside you is awakening as you hear these words, I invite you to subscribe and join this community. Not a crowd, but a circle of conscious souls, each learning to protect their energy, to listen to silence, to master the unseen. Because when one of us awakens, we all rise a little higher. But there's one more sign, one deeper than triggers, older than words, and hidden beneath the very structure of the soul. It's a signal that only appears when you've begun to master your inner stillness. And when it reveals itself, everything you thought you knew about your own energy begins to unravel. There is a silence deeper than the absence of sound, a silence that feels alive. You don't hear it with your ears, you feel it in your bones. It hums beneath everything you do, like a forgotten rhythm your soul once knew by heart. That silence is the third and final sign. At first, it comes disguised as loneliness. You withdraw, you detach, you feel a strange emptiness, like standing at the edge of something vast and invisible. But that emptiness isn't a void. It's space being cleared for revelation. When you stop being available to the noise of the world, you become available to something far greater, the voice of God within you. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand, it simply is. A pulse beneath reality, a quiet knowing that whispers, "You are not lost, you are never alone." Carl Jung believed that the human soul is a bridge between matter and spirit, that within each of us lies a divine spark, the same force that moves the stars. When you guard your energy, when you refuse to give your light to chaos, you begin to tune into that frequency. You start hearing what others can't, seeing what others won't, feeling what the rational mind has forgotten. This is not imagination, it's alignment. Quantum physicists call it coherence. When the particles of your being vibrate in harmony, you no longer resist the flow of the universe. You become part of it. You realize that everything you once sought, peace, love, purpose, was never outside you. It was buried under layers of noise, guilt, and distraction. And then, one day, it happens. You wake up, and the world looks different. Colors seem softer yet more vivid. Time slows down. Even your breath feels sacred. You are no longer fighting life, you are moving with it. That is the divine paradox. By becoming unavailable to everyone, you finally become connected to everything. You stop reacting and you start resonating. You stop begging for signs because you are the sign. But this moment of awakening is not peaceful at first. It burns. It strips away illusions. You begin to see not only your light, but your shadow. Every wound you denied, every truth you buried. The silence reveals everything because silence hides nothing. And when you face that truth, it feels like dying. Because, in a way, it is. The self you built for approval dissolves. The mask that smiled when it wanted to cry falls away. The old version of you, the one who lived for validation, who feared rejection, begins to fade. And what remains is raw, radiant, terrifyingly real. This is the sacred death of availability and the birth of presence. It is resurrection without ceremony, baptism without water. It is the moment your soul remembers what it truly is, a fragment of the eternal, clothed in human experience. When this happens, you stop searching for signs and start living as one. Every coincidence becomes communication. Every challenge becomes initiation. Every breath becomes prayer. But let me tell you something personal and from the heart. This work, these messages, this channel, it doesn't exist for profit or fame. It exists because somewhere in the dark, someone needs to hear what I once needed to hear, that your silence is not weakness, that your boundaries are sacred, that your awakening has purpose. If you felt this message touch something deep inside, I ask you, not for me, but for this community, to like this video and subscribe. Because every person who joins adds one more light to this circle of awakening souls. This is not an audience, it's a movement of the unseen, people remembering who they are, one breath at a time. And once you enter this silence, this space between thoughts and reactions, you begin to understand the real miracle. God doesn't only live in churches, temples, or sacred books. He lives in the pause between your thoughts. He lives in the breath you take after pain. He lives in the moment you choose peace instead of control. The prophets, the mystics, the saints, they all spoke of this same truth through different languages. Jesus called it the kingdom within. The Buddhists called it enlightenment. The Sufis called it union. Science calls it coherence, but they all point to the same thing, that divinity is not above you or beyond you. It is in you, waiting to be remembered. When you finally hear that voice, the still, small voice that speaks without words, you realize that being unavailable to the world was never about closing doors. It was about opening the one door that truly matters, the one that leads inward. And in that inner sanctuary, you feel it, the pulse of eternity moving through you. You understand that every loss, every silence, every heartbreak was guiding you back to this sacred truth. You were never meant to be constantly available, because you were never meant to be ordinary. You were meant to be present, fully, consciously, divinely. But this awakening comes with a new responsibility, one that few are ready for. Because once you remember who you are, the world begins to test your light. And in that testing lies the final mystery, the one that separates awakening from purpose. And that is where the true transformation begins. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when you realize that all the chaos, all the silence, and all the loss were never random. They were invitations, sacred calls to awaken the part of you that has been asleep for far too long. Every person who left, every word that hurt, every moment you were forced into solitude, they were not punishments. They were mirrors. Each one whispered the same truth. You are ready to become who you truly are. The signs were never outside you. They were the pauses in your breath, the nights you couldn't sleep, the tears that came without warning. They were the people who triggered you, the lessons that repeated, the walls you kept hitting until you stopped running and finally looked within. Because the awakening of the soul doesn't arrive as thunder. it arrives as stillness. You see, when you stop being available to everything and everyone, you make yourself available to what really matters, to the divine rhythm of life that has always been waiting for you to notice it. You start to live differently. You no longer chase, you attract. You no longer explain, you embody. You no longer seek approval, you radiate truth. And in that quiet radiance, something extraordinary happens. Your presence begins to heal. Without words, without effort. People around you feel calmer, environments shift, even the air changes when you walk into a room. Because your energy is no longer scattered across the opinions and emotions of others. It's whole, luminous, anchored. This is what Carl Jung called individuation, becoming an integrated, authentic being who no longer hides their soul behind masks. Look around you. The world needs people like that more than ever. Not louder voices, not faster opinions, but centered hearts. Souls who can stand in their truth without shouting. Souls who can love without losing themselves. Souls who can remain still while everything else trembles. You are not here by accident. You were led here by signs, by curiosity, by something in your spirit that whispered, "There's more than this." And now you know, the more you protect your peace, the more you become a beacon for others to find theirs. You are not withdrawing from life, you are leading it from within. Remember this, your silence is not emptiness, it is alignment. Your solitude is not loss, it is strength. And your awakening is not rebellion, it is remembrance. Because every soul that chooses to wake up sends ripples across the collective. When you find peace, you don't just change your life, you change the frequency of everyone who crosses your path. This is how the world truly transforms, one conscious person at a time. So breathe deeply, right now. Feel that pulse inside your chest. That's eternity beating within you. The same force that moves oceans, that births stars, that keeps the planet spinning. It's the same light that lives in your heart. You've just remembered it. And this remembrance is your purpose. To walk through the world as light disguised as human, to speak softly, to love deeply, to withdraw when needed, and to shine when called, to remind others, simply by being, that peace is possible. Before we close, I want to say this from the heart. This channel, this space, this message, it isn't built for numbers or profit. It's built out of pure devotion for people like you who are ready to see, to heal, and to remember. If this message resonated with you, if it touched something sacred within, I invite you to like this video and subscribe to this community, not just as a viewer, but as a part of a growing circle of souls awakening together. And I'd love to know who you are. Leave a comment below with your name and city, and I'll send you a personal blessing in our next video. Because every name, every story, every light in this community matters. You are not just watching, you are part of something divine unfolding right now. As you close your eyes tonight, may you feel this truth settling in your heart. You don't need to be everywhere to make an impact. You only need to be present, truly, fully, sacredly present. And from that stillness, everything changes. Because when you finally stop being available to the noise of the world, you become available to the voice of God.